Okay, I just want to get this out of the way, okay? Ashley's back with us again this Sunday, okay? And I'm telling you, the only reason she pops up is so that we have to give her a cake when she leaves again, okay? We're not doing it. She got her cake once. That was it. Congratulations. That's it. It's one time, once and for always. That's the way it goes. Welcome back. Glad you could be with us. So sometimes we have this conversation in our house, and it comes up, and it goes, hey, you know, why don't we be a tourist? We have this day free, so-and-so. Why don't we get dressed and go into New York City, which obviously is just an amazing place to wander around and see things. And why don't we go in and see whether or not, we'll just run around, we'll do all the stuff that tourists do. And this is a complete system. I mean, you have to wear appropriate clothing for this, which means you're either wearing a Mets hat or a Yankees hat, right? You're wearing either Jets or Giants, right? And you're walking around, and as you're walking down the streets, like every other tourist, you're staring up at the skyscrapers, right? So it's all part of the theme. And, you know, it usually involves one of those hot dog vendors on the corner, and you end up having a hot dog, and I'll tell you, you know, that's one of those hot dogs that stay with you for like a week or two, you know? You know what I'm talking about. You know, that night you're laying in bed, and you never thought it could revisit, but it's there, it comes right back. So the thing that I always find interesting is when we do this, and the one time we went up to the Empire State Building, and if you've ever gone there, there's varying levels that you have to wait to take an elevator to get to the next level, then you go to the next level. And the one level is pretty significant. I'd say it's about the size of this entire space. And it has those things where you wait in line, you know, so that you could get on the elevator, go upstairs. And I remember the last time we were there, it was Donna, Arthur, and I said to Arthur, listen. He's like, what am I listening for? Listen to the voices. And what was so amazing is how many different languages were being spoken, because the experience pulled us all together. So people who would never really bump up against each other are standing in line because everyone wants to go to the top of this thing and take a look around. And if you listen to that, you know, it's pretty cool. And I remember just being amazed by all the different voices. If you go even to a store, you'll notice that the experience of shopping brings together a whole bunch of people that you would just typically not really bump up against. There's a commonality to the fact that you need to buy food. Without food, you're going to starve, and starvation's not desirable, so everyone is there. I don't know why, but Saturday mornings between like 8 and 12 seem to be prime time, and you would think people would shift off to another time slot, but they don't. And so you're walking up and down the aisles, and you'll see people of all different, you know, backgrounds and cultures and whatnot, and everyone is, you know, all getting together, you know, to do some of that and to shop and get what they need for their families. Now, all of that, for me, is incredibly impressive. I think most where you see this pull together of strangers who are sharing a common experience is really in the hospitals. Because in a hospital, which, you know, I spend a lot of time wandering in and out of hospitals, when you walk into a hospital, you know, you go see, you know, whoever you're visiting, and the person next to them could be an entire different, you know, race, language, religion, you know, and they're side by side, you know, in a hospital room. And it's the experience of being sick that has pulled them all together. I'm sharing all this because you got to recognize that this group of 10 guys who are wandering around, the only thing they all have in common is the fact that they're all lepers. And we're really not invited to understand that reality until they're healed and they come back, and Jesus says the one is a Samaritan, what happened to the others? Which means that you had Jews or whatever else was that buildup, because we really don't know who else constituted that group, and you had a Samaritan. And we've talked about this before. This is simply not a group of people that hung out together. They hated each other. The history between Jews and Samaritans is horrid. And so, you know, they wouldn't Jesus would get yelled at for walking through Samaria and encountering and talking to the woman at the well, who was a Samaritan, right? So there's all of that going on. So here in this society, with such tension between Samaritans and Jews, you have this reality where the experience of being a leper brings these people together, that they actually are family. They're looking out for one another. They're traveling together. Why? Safety in numbers. Safety in numbers. Let's take it a little step further. Leprosy for Jesus' day is not like most illnesses that we encounter in our society. We don't often, though some people think that if they get sick, somehow it is a response from God or a punishment from God for something that they have received. As a chaplain, I hear that all the time. And, people will mutter little simple phrases like, oh God, why? And those are phrases that as a chaplain I'm trained to listen to and respond to, because somewhere inside that statement that just off the cuff came out of their mouth is a reality, is a belief that somehow they are being and they are receiving and they are sick because they have done something. And God, by the way, is the one who has personally assigned this illness and disease to this individual. It happens very often. In Jesus' day, this was horrid, especially if you were a Jew, because for the Jews, not only did they absolutely believe that your illness, anything, and just quick side note, leprosy for these people could have been a very bad case of acne, could have been eczema. They didn't have any of the diagnostics we have. They simply understood that the skin had blemishes, and if the blemishes covered a good part of the body, they automatically, out of fear of being open and exposed to leprosy, they sent them out of the town. And sometimes, to the tune of rocks being thrown at you so that you would leave them. So the idea of leprosy here, was really that God was punishing you either for something you did or something your family did. So this type of illness separated you, not simply because you were sick and your skin was deteriorating and no one wanted to come near you, which is why Luke's gospel, they stand at a distance and they cry out, "Have mercy on me." At a distance. It's required by law, both religious and civil. You cannot come within close proximity of someone who has leprosy, and as a leper, you cannot allow yourself to come close to someone like that. So there is this huge problem. One, you are seen, if you're a leper, you are seen as this is something that God is punishing you for personally for something you've done or your family has done. Secondly, besides having this horrid experience of what's happening to your skin and the sicknesses and the festering wounds and the infections that come with all that, there is also now the inability for you to be social. You cannot hang around with anyone except for other lepers. You're not allowed. If your family can't visit them, can't go and see them, can't stop in, can't say hi, can't have coffee, nothing, none of that. So there's this whole social separation. There is the fact that God has punished you, but also for a Jew, what would be most important for this time and period is that they are not able to worship. They're not part of the religious community. They're not allowed to go to temple. They're not allowed anywhere near a temple. They're simply not. So you have, with this illness and this disease, and for us in our society and the people we know and the times we've been sick and whatnot, we've experienced some of this. If you have cancer, right, people treat you a little bit differently. That C word still, right, still scares us, right? AIDS, we all remember what AIDS was like, right, and all that. And all. So we have connections and sensations around some of that. But, for these people who had this disease, you were separated from everything. it stripped you of every dignity and so much of what we just all simply take for granted. And most importantly, even God is not on your side. And God's not the one you go to for healing, because God's the one who gave it to you. So understand, when these people approach Jesus, why? Where do they get it from? Where do they get the faith from? 'Cause Jesus points it out, right? The reason they're healed, the reason they're restored, is because of faith. They actually recognize in this person of Jesus the ability that if I approach him, and if I ask humbly, and I beg for mercy, that Jesus has the ability and the authority, not just the ability, the authority and the desire to respond and to provide for them what it is that they ask. So Jesus, being a Jew, tells them exactly what it is that, I believe it's in Exodus, that is told, go show yourself to the priests. So on their way there, which is an act of faith, notice Jesus isn't doing any tremendous magical tricks. He doesn't line them up. He doesn't make them walk around in circles. He doesn't give them anything special to eat or drink. He doesn't. All he does is command them to go forth and to show themselves to the priest. Their response, the fact that they trusted in his words, that they trusted that because he asked them to do this, made all the difference. That in this person of Jesus is the authority that if we follow what it is that he says, there will be transformation in our lives. They don't get anything. There's no tokens. There's no special prayer, right? Jesus doesn't stand there and extend his arms. Doesn't do anything. He just tells them, go show yourself to the priest. Now, if there was more than that, Luke would have put it in there. Luke definitely would have put it in, because it doesn't make any sense. All you got is Jesus telling a bunch of lepers at a distance to go show yourself. He doesn't even walk over. He doesn't even break into their social and religious separation. He doesn't do any of that. And we would think that this Jesus, especially, who is so anti-establishment, would love to jump into that situation and say, hey, look, come, and give them a hug. And then in the midst of the hug, they're healed, right? The movie would look so much better if that was the case, right? But he doesn't do any of that. He simply commands that they go and show themselves to the priest. And as they simply trust and believe in the authority and the integrity of this person, Jesus, they turn and they walk. And as they're walking toward to go find a priest, one of them turns around and comes back. Now, if you're a Samaritan, you're not a Jew. For the Samaritan to turn and to go show himself to the priest is almost a little ironic. It's a little funny. He's a Samaritan. He's not a Jew. He doesn't believe in any of this. But yet, because Jesus tells him to go, he turns with the rest. And I'm sure as he's walking, going, well, this should be exciting. Wait till that priest gets a load of me showing up at the temple, Wait till he sees me coming and finds out I'm a Samaritan. Yeah, I'm going to get cured of my leprosy, and then they're going to stone me to death because I'm a Samaritan. See, I think the Samaritan turns around and runs back to Jesus because it is safer going back to Jesus than it is wandering into a town of Jews when you're the only one. And by the way, everyone there sort of like hates you. And so Jesus turns around. I'm kidding. I'm sure he goes back because he recognizes that it has happened. And we've all had this euphoric feeling and experience. Something happens to us, right? Just totally unexpected. I mean, we hope for it, but then when it happens, we catch ourselves. We're like, wow, right? And yet, it takes our breath away and all. And I'm sure in that midst of excitement where, he notices that what was there is not there and that his skin is repaired. And remember, these people are suffering for such a long period of time. And leprosy, the problem with leprosy is you could live a very long time with leprosy as it slowly rots away your flesh. So we don't even know how long this poor fella has been dealing with this. And yet, as he experiences this, he realizes that the priest isn't the final answer or the course. That the course that he has to take now is he has to go back to the one who commanded him to go in that direction. And he comes back, and what is it? Did you understand what Luke was saying? And that's why I go through this whole thing about the culture. He comes up and he falls at the feet of Jesus. He has now broken the traditional distance that is required him as a leper. He now no longer sees himself as a leper. He doesn't see himself like that anymore. He knows that he has been healed. He knows that he has been restored. He doesn't identify like that anymore. And as a little bit of a tagline as Christians, we are redeemed. We are forgiven. We are saved, and we have an opportunity of an intimate relationship with God. Jesus has provided all this for it. It's all available to us. And yet sometimes I think we still think we're lepers, and we need to keep a distance. And yet he just realizes Jesus did this, and so he moves and he runs and he falls right at his feet, and then the next thing you know, Jesus is sort of asking his disciples, there were 10. Where are the other 9? Now, Jesus' point is that this Samaritan recognizes and affirms, which is important for Luke's community to hear, that this person of Jesus is God. And Jesus points out that this individual comes back and gives thanks to God. So Luke is making that connection that, he understands that Jesus is the equivalent in equals the power and the authority of Yahweh, of God. And so he comes back and encounters him. Now, in defense of the other 9, okay, if somebody told me that I had to walk from here to the train station, and by getting to the train station, I don't know, whatever, I'd be healed of something. And along the way, I'm healed. Tell me you wouldn't be slightly terrified of doing anything less than what it is that you've been told to do, because you'd be afraid that if you didn't follow through and do what you were told to do, that it would come back to you. So honestly, in defense of the other 9, let's take it easy on them, okay? Because they've had a tough run of it, and now here they are, and yes, perhaps they recognize also, nothing says that this healing came about all at the same time. It doesn't say anywhere in the scriptures that all 10 were made clean all at the same time. It doesn't say any of that. So it might be that this Samaritan might have been the first of the 10 to recognize that he's been cured. And so his reaction is what we really don't know about the other guy. And I just want us to take it easy on them, because I think it's really easy to say, oh, well, oh, look at them. They weren't grateful. Oh, look at them. They weren't whatever. And I don't know. I have to be honest and tell you, from a human perspective, if I had leprosy and this guy told me to walk down to wherever, I'd walk, and I'd just keep walking, and I'd move in with the priest. I'd be in his house, I'd be sleeping in his bed. Whatever I needed to do, just because I'm so grateful for the fact that I'm healed of this, right? So let's take it easy on those guys. But there is this point, though. The Samaritan chooses to come back to God and give gratitude and see in the person of Jesus divinity and his healing. The other 9 choose to follow through because I believe their religiosity, what they've been taught about the temple and about priests and their authority, doesn't allow for any movement in their hearts or their heads to see that some things are greater than religion and religious tradition. And there he was, standing right there, giving you the command, which brought about this healing, and you still could not break away from believing that it was the trip to the priests that really was bringing about your healing, and it wasn't simply this man's command. And I think for us, sometimes we get stuck like that too. You know, one of the reasons this morning when we got together, I honestly believe that what has happened in the Middle East is because of the prayers of the faithful. I do. I simply believe that. I believe that my prayers and yours, our heart's desires, and not just Christians. There's a big group of people who have been crying out to God, asking for. I honestly do believe that God has heard prayers and God has engaged, not because God was waiting for us to ask him to do this, but that God cares about his children. And if enough of us unify ourselves in prayer, notice there's 10 of them that ask for mercy. It's not one. There's 10 of them. There's a group of people who combined believe that this person of Jesus is trustworthy, that he has integrity, and that he is indeed the Son of God, God's presence here on earth. And as a group, they cried out for mercy and for healing, and Jesus provides just that. What difference is that from what we do when we gather as a community here, physically, or even in the course of a week when we raise our hearts to God? None. But there is something about the fact that we have this shared experience. We're all sort of a little broken. We're all a little feeble. We all stumble along the way. We all equally want a life filled with meaning and purpose. We want to know that our God exists and acts. We want to know that we're not praying into dead air space. We want to know there is a recipient. And we want that experience of that. And I'm simply saying to you that as we gather as a community crying out for that, it's the same experience of those who come before Jesus as lepers. We're lepers. We're lepers. But we're lepers together as a community. And we have this amazing opportunity to cry out to this same Jesus who lives and reigns, who wants to heal, who wants to hear our cry, and wants to give us the direction that we need to go so that we can be restored. And tell me if somewhere in the course of our week, as we stumble along all the things that bother us and concern us, and relationships and finances and our own health issues and all these things, tell me if those are not all common experiences that we have, which is why we come together as a community once a week at least, and we make our cry for mercy together, because we have this common experience. And it's called frail humanity. It's called struggling faith. It's called a lack of courage. It's called struggling to believe in the midst of everything we see. It's something we all have in common. That's our leprosy. But our cure is Jesus Christ. God bless you.